How's it going, everyone? You're listening to another episode of The House of Grey. Wow, I don't think that poltergeist girl has anything on Monson. I mean, creepy voices coming from the speakers, alter egos staring you down from plasma televisions. Whoa, that's way out there. After the episode, head on over to houseofgreybook.com and discuss the finer points of the plot in the forum. Or you could check out the blog and see some of the extras we've posted there. I guess I should get everybody started on this episode before that short weird lady comes out and starts telling everyone to walk into the light. Make sure your TV is off. You might want to unplug it just to be sure. And hold on for episode 16.
Grey, are you all right? Monson sat up. Whoa, hang on there, buddy. A hand caught him as the blood suddenly rushed to Monson's head. He felt as if a 10-ton truck had just hit him. What happened? Monson opened a bleary eye and peered at his savior. The diamond? Damian Peterson stared down at Monson, a gentle expression on his face. Monson's face reflected his confusion. What was the diamond doing here, and why was he helping him? Monson started to speak as Damian lowered him back to the floor. What's the diamond doing here? His voice sounded hoarse, as if he had never used it before. He also noticed how dry his mouth was. A split second after he spoke, a water bottle appeared at his lips. Here, drink. Monson drank deeply from the bottle and heard the crackle of contorting plastic. Trying to consume the water faster than his mouth and throat would let him, he choked on the flow of cool, streaming liquid. Bending at the waist, he sat up, gagging. Slow down there, Monson. Damian patted him on the back. The bottle isn't going anywhere. Sorry, for some reason I'm really thirsty. Monson took a moment to ascertain his current location, while his perceptions sharpened. He was still in the posh weight room, but again, what was Damian doing here? You didn't answer my question. Monson's statement came out abruptly. He adjusted his tone. He did not want to sound rude. Actually, I guess a better question than what you're doing here is, where is here? This is my private weight room. It was absolutely amazing that he said it with a straight face. Wow. Monson reached for the water bottle and took another swig. They sure do treat you right, don't they? Sure must be nice to be the diamond. Damian slumped. Please don't call me that. I hate that nickname. Damian Peterson doesn't like his nickname? Monson thought. He marveled at the revelation. Damian continued. And to be completely honest, this room isn't something that comes with being the diamond. It's actually the Hormveers. I've just been using it because it can be quite bothersome to use the main one. He gave Monson a guilty look, and a sheepish smile. Monson returned the smile with one of his own. I don't care if you use it, Damian. Damian's smile became more prevalent. I figured you wouldn't. He helped Monson to his feet and they made their way to the juice bar on the far side of the room. The juice mechanism sprang to life the moment they sat, and just as before, glasses of juice emerged from the inner workings of the counter. Monson's was mango again, this time with a hint of lime. Damian's juice was red, with a strong smell of strawberries. They drank their juice in silence, not speaking. Monson's gaze turned upwards, towards the closest plasma screen, which had come back to life. He suddenly shifted his eyes away from the screen as he abruptly remembered his last moments before he blacked out. He glanced around the room. Everything seemed normal. No disembodied voice or spooky incarnation of past selves. For the briefest of moments, Monson thought that maybe Damian was playing a trick on him, but instantly pushed this thought away. If he was playing a trick on him, why would he help him afterwards? He wouldn't, of course. There would be no point. Monson wondered if he was going crazy. From the beginning of his Collin experience, he thought he had been pretty understanding, taking very strange events in stride and, well, even running with them. However, the time seemed to be quickly approaching when he would really need to figure out which of these events were in his head and which were real. Both were terrifying prospects. If they were all in his head, then he would only find out by placing himself under a magnifying glass and taking a real look at his inner self. He found himself becoming more and more scared of what he might find. What if that overtly dangerous feeling that periodically assaulted him was his true personality? What if he was cold and violent? Could his life remain the way it was? Could he maintain his relationships with the people who were quickly becoming so important to him? The answer was a blaring no, and it sunk into him as a terrible truth. The second prospect was no more appealing. Between his mirrored self in the TV screens, Artorius and Casey's Superman-like abilities, Kylie's mind control power, and his own out-of-body experiences, Monson had crossed the line into the Twilight Zone. There was no rational explanation for any of it, no matter how much he wanted to believe there was. All these events and experiences caused him to ask, was all this real? Or was he going to wake up, still in the hospital, and realize this was all a dream? Something about that scenario made sense. In this dream world, scarred, mentally broken boys could have their moment, make friends, and even get the girl. In this world, that which was known to be truth could be affected by that which we believed and perceived. In a world like that, massive balls of blood-red energy made sense. It allowed someone to accomplish great tasks of physical strength and provided a way to bend the wills of others for the slightest of moments in the pursuit of justice. Maybe this was all a dream. Collin, Mr. Gat, his friends, everything. Monson gave his own arm a little pinch. Nope, this was not a dream. So, if it was not a dream, and he was not hallucinating, then how should he proceed? What should he do? How was he to come to understand phenomena that are not supposed to exist? Damien's voice interrupted Monson's thoughts. Monson, shouldn't we take you to the medical wing? No, I'm okay. I just need to... Damien shook his head. Monson, fainting isn't something that just happens. No, I suppose you're right. Still. He turned to face Damien. I don't want to go to the med wing. Damien bowed his head in acknowledgement. If you say so. You know, you're not really what I expected. Damien answered in surprise. How do you mean? You're really, I don't know, nice. It was the only word Monson could think of. Damien sighed. You told me that once before, you know. I did? Monson's confusion mirrored Damien's. Really? Yeah, though you were a lot less, well, you know. Oh, ouch. Monson shook his hand as if it stung. That one hurt, Mr. Diamond. Damien gave an appreciative chuckle, but turned away slightly as he did. Monson? Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't come to see you in the hospital. Monson raised an eyebrow. Damien laughed as he peered at Monson through the corner of his eye. You and that eyebrow of yours. I can always tell when you're confused. Damien knew him well enough to read his expressions? Yep, it was official. Monson had no idea what was going on. I'm sorry, Damien, but I don't really understand what's happening. Damien shook his head. So, you really did lose your memory. I figured you did when you didn't respond to me at orientation. Monson's jaw dropped. What did you just say? Your memory, it's a little on the messed up side, right? Damien asked the question calmly, like it was an everyday thing. Monson could not believe what he was hearing. You knew that I lost my memory because I didn't wave at you? Damien gave him a guilty expression. Well, not exactly. I don't understand. No, I don't expect that you do. Damien rubbed his face lightly in a curious gesture. Okay, I've been following your progress ever since I found out that you were one of the survivors of Barty Bridge. Monson sat staring, completely stationary, numb, as if doused by a bucket of freezing cold water. He spoke quietly. But how did you know that I was one of the survivors? I have my sources. I knew long before that idiot of a dean told the whole student body. Damien spoke in the same calm tone, though this time it held a hint of sorrow. I tracked you down to that hospital in Portland. This was about a week after you had woke up. I was relieved to find that you were alive, but then I found you weren't allowed to see anyone but family. Monson, I'm really sorry about your grandfather. I know how much he meant to you, even if you don't at this point. Monson nodded. Damien continued. Anyway, I didn't find out about your memory loss until about mid-July. I wasn't trying to be nosy or anything. I was just wondering why they weren't releasing your name to the public, or even saying that you were one of the survivors. I figured that they wanted to give you time to recover, before the government agencies were on you like lice. This disaster has been the biggest ordeal since that close call with China 2 years ago. They still don't know who did it or why. They're also saying that the weapon that was used is like nothing they've ever seen, and that it's so advanced, it shouldn't even exist. The police and FBI are baffled, and to make matters worse, the only names that keep popping up are yours and your grandfather's. Monson's shock gave way to amazement. Answers, real answers to his pending questions were coming and finding their mark. Monson stared at Damien, his face again reflecting this shock. So, if my grandfather and I are the only connection they currently have to work with, then why haven't I heard anything until now? Damien laughed. Monson tried to keep his already blooming scowl from becoming more prevalent. He did not understand why Damien was laughing. Damien, obviously noticing this, attempted to regain his composure. Sorry about that, Monson. It's just, I keep forgetting that you probably don't know any of this. Don't know any of what? The reason why no one has been able to touch you. Monson waved a hand, as if to tell Damien to proceed. Every federal enforcement agency was, and probably still is, trying to gain access to you. From what my sources say, they were literally ready to kick in your door when they found out you had awoken in the hospital. The questions just kept piling up. So, why didn't they? My only family died on that bridge. There wasn't anyone to stop them, and if it's a matter of national security, who would have kept them away? I think you're forgetting someone. Damien tapped the side of his head as if to say, think about it. Monson propped a weary elbow on the steel counter. I have no idea. There isn't anyone that cares. He stopped mid-word as the image of a chubby but unbelievably cute woman with brown curly hair entered his mind. Molly. Damien, apparently reading his face, continued his explanation. A really scary lawyer lady said that you couldn't remember anything, and that if anyone tried to bother you, she would personally... What were her exact words? Oh yeah, rewire their undercarriage. Damien looked thoughtfully for a moment. I think that's a direct quote. Molly said what? I know, right? Suffice it to say, she kept everyone away from you. Molly's goofy, giggling laugh came to Monson's mind. He felt the corners of his eyes start to moisten. Silly woman. She didn't tell me? No, I didn't suspect that she did. Damien's tone suddenly became very serious. For some reason, the FBI seems to think that you're the key piece of information to cracking the case. That there's something that you know that could lead them to the people who did that. It's been quite the fight behind the scenes. There's an appeal going to the Ninth Court of Appeals right now in hopes of getting what was the word? The injunction. Yeah, that's it. Repealed. No wonder she didn't want me to live with her and was so insistent on me coming here. I wondered about that. Monson ran a finger along the rim of his barely touched juice. She was probably trying to keep me from all this. You were considering not coming to Collin? Yeah, I almost didn't. It was your dream. Okay, dream might be pushing it, but it was really important. Why? Monson stared at Damien, his face patient but slightly sardonic. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Sorry about that, Grey. Monson smiled. I'll let you slide this once. Damien's face plainly showed his amusement. They sat in silence, both deep in thought. Monson felt a certain amount of both relief and worry start to course its way through his mind on the weakened rails of his locomotive of thought. It was very encouraging to receive answers to questions. It was like having a huge burden suddenly lifted off his shoulders. Then again, when the answers you've sought after just end up creating more questions, does the burden really become lighter? Monson thought that no, it probably did not. He asked himself the dreaded question that was gnawing at him somewhere near his stomach. Could he really be the key to what happened back in May? Could he somehow be involved in that attack that killed so many? Did he even want an answer to that question? Did he want to know the truth? Monson laughed as he thought of Mr. Gatt. What were the facts? Are they different from the truth? What did he believe to be true? And how did that affect the facts and the actual truth? The facts? Well, the facts were he was on that bridge that day, and something very bad happened, leaving him broken both in body and spirit, and many, many others dead. What did he believe? He believed that he knew himself well enough to know that he was a good person, and that he would never, could never, do something like that. At least, he knew that about the person that stared back at him in the bathroom mirror each morning. As for the previous Monson Grey? But was that even the truth? No, the truth was that he just did not know. He did not know the truth of those events, or even the truth of his own past. He did his best to clear his mind and refocus. What did he know? What truth did he possess? He did know that he understood things that he should not understand. He saw things that he should not be able to see, things that were impossible, even to the most open-minded individual. He also knew that in times of heightened emotion, his personality became cold, cruel, and deadly. In that exact moment, Monson felt very afraid. Much more afraid than he had ever been. How much can you remember, Monson? Damien's question came out of nowhere and snapped Monson out of his musing. He did his best to answer. Bits and pieces mostly, though I guess I shouldn't complain. More and more comes back to me every day. Do you remember anything about me or the competition? Monson swung his head from side to side. No. When I heard your name, I got this feeling that I should know you as everything about you seems familiar. But I guess that's not very significant. Most things seem familiar to me these days. Well, then why don't we start again? Damien put out his hand. Monson smiled and shook it. Unfortunately, he did not see the knife in Damien's other hand. Monson's world went still as a demon-eyed Damien plunged the gleaming silver blade into his chest. He stared blankly as the life ran from his wound. Damien let go of Monson's hand. With the blade protruding from him, Monson started to fall back off the stool. Damien laughed a malicious cackle, deep, dark, and sinister.
Monson saw the diamond's face start to melt away. The twisted, dripping shape morphed to reveal Monson's own unscarred countenance. A deafening crash split the air as the walls of the weight room crumbled. Equipment, dumbbells, TVs, and shattered mirrors all were dashed into a billion pieces as Monson saw the ceiling ripped asunder, leaving a view of the wicked night sky. He looked up in horror as the floor caved in around him, and the bloody light of the crescent moon witnessed his descent into the darkness.
Red, swirling clouds of crimson thick. I awake in the foggy mists of a room. The room of death and gore. I put forth my hand and grasp a blade. In the room of death and gore. A blade of fiery light, a blade beckoning might. It asks me, it begs me, it commands me, fight. My blade and I move amongst down bodies, all fallen in the room of death and gore. I look, I see, I behold, foes, in the room of death and gore. A challenger comes before me, a day of judgment, a day of reckoning, a day of death, in the room of death and gore. His fear, it clings to me, it exhilarates me, it liberates me. He will die in this room of death and gore. There is no place for fear, there is no place for pity, there is no place for tears, not in the room of death and gore. A sword in his hand he holds upright. I cleave down. My opponent falls. My opponent's gone. He will journey no more from this room of death and gore. Others come. Others appear. Their fates all remain the same. To forget. To be forgotten. Left in the room of death and gore. A man appears before me. In him I recognize my reason for fighting, for killing, for being, in this room of death and gore. Long-lasting the duel clashes deep into this scarlet night, in this room of death and gore. We fight. A flash of gray, a flash of silver, a flash of gold, all come to head in blades of black and white. I strike this man, and come to know I will not prevail, nor overcome, as this man is me.
As this man is I. Monson abruptly woke, sensing another's presence. His hand leapt out with blazing speed, catching the arm of Cyan Harrison. Wait, where am I? He thought. He scanned his surroundings. He lay at the base of a massive oak tree. In the distance, he could see an obscured portion of the yard's backside. Once again, blood rushed to his head. On the other hand, maybe it was the first time. He was not sure. Monson? He looked toward Cyan, whose voice sounded pained. He grimaced. He had almost forgotten she was there. He realized that he was still holding her arm in a vice-like grip. Staggered breathing and a slightly red face told him that he was hurting the girl. He immediately released her. Where's Damien? Did he bring me out here? Damien? As in Damien Peterson? Cyan cocked her head, baffled. I haven't seen anyone but you, Monson. No, that could not be right. He looked down sharply, searching his body. He should be dead. That knife strike should have been deadly. Or was it a sword? His mind was so fuzzy he could not think. He did his best to sharpen his senses as he felt his body for a large hole. He found nothing out of the ordinary. No hole, no blood,
He looked around and listened to the sounds. There were no agonizing sounds of the dead, no fallen bodies, no gory scenes. For that matter, there was no Ghost in the Machine TVs or a demonic Damian Peterson. There was only normal, semi-pleasant scenery and Cyan Harrison. He noticed that her perplexed expression was growing more and more defined as the minutes passed. It was a dream, then? He thought. But if it was a dream, when did it start? He suddenly noticed Cyan's arm. He could see the blotchy outline of an imprinted hand on her skin. He felt the beginnings of shame start to gurgle in his gut. He wanted to explain, to tell her why, make her understand that it was not her fault, that he was, well, he didn't know what he was. It's okay. Cyan's voice felt gentle and soothing, in a way that he did not know was possible, especially coming from her. So, are you okay? Am I okay? The question confused him. Why would she ask that? Yes, are you okay? Cyan pointed to where he was sitting. You look like you were having a pretty nasty dream. She was concerned because she thought he was having a bad dream? He was not sure how to react to that. Was she making fun of him? Everyone has bad dreams. Why would she worry about his? I'll live. His voice held a sliver of suspicion. Comes with the territory, I guess. You know, being an emo and all. What's an emo? His face contorted as he realized what he had just done. Emo was a word that many anime watchers used to describe an overly emotional individual. He had seen it used several times by Casey and Artorius on the various forums they frequented. It was not a word that normal people knew. He could not believe he just used it in real conversation. Never mind. He searched for something else to talk about. What time is it? Cyan brought her hand out and glanced at the watch on her wrist. 4:30. His shock was renewed. Really? She nodded her head. Where had the time gone? What about Casey? Where did he end up? What are you doing back here? Her tone was light, but back to its usual guarded self. It's a long story. It was a lie, of course, but what was he supposed to say? He could not remember how he ended up here. She did not voice it, but he could tell that she was not buying it. He took advantage of her momentary lapse. While we're on the subject, why are you back here? In all honesty, Monson was not just using this question as a distraction. He was genuinely curious. There was nothing except trees and creeping national forest behind the yard. So why would Cyan, of all people, be here? I always take this way home. She gestured towards the forest. There's a trail that takes you towards the river and along its banks for a bit. It ends up out near the barracks. This way is a lot quieter than the normal path, so I take it whenever possible. Trying to keep a low profile, huh? Cyan's lush blue eyes bore into him. Something like that. As she said this, Monson noticed her rubbing lightly at the place where he had grabbed her. She was trying to act tough, but he could tell that it was hurting her. He felt a sick feeling again well up. He had to say something. I know I said this, but I am really sorry that I hurt you. I promise, I didn't mean to. You don't need to explain. I shouldn't have surprised you. Again, her tone was calming. You just surprised me. You're a lot stronger than you look. Surprised? He felt surprised, too. Strong was not a word he would have used to describe himself. Yeah, a little. She looked away from him. Her next question sounded nervous. Can I ask you something? He chalked an eyebrow as she pushed her dark hair out of her eyes. When she spoke, her voice held a hint of amusement. She pointed at his raised eyebrow. I'll take that as a yes. He smiled and nodded, indicating his approval. Did you write this? She proffered a yellow notebook that he recognized as Casey's. He stared at her in bewilderment. What are you doing with Casey's screenplay? What do you mean? Her confusion seemed as palpable as Monson's. I took this from you. I figured it had to be important. I mean, you were half asleep, but still managed to grab my arm with that steel trap of a hand. It seemed like you were protecting it or something. Yeah, it's important. He took the notebook from her. It's something that Casey's been working on for... I'm not talking about the screenplay. You're not talking about the screenplay? He scratched at his head. Then what are you talking about? She flipped to the final page of the notebook and started to read the frantically scrawled text. Monson stared at the page, bewildered, as the horror of his dreams came crashing back to reality. Red, swirling clouds of crimson thick.
You've been listening to the podcast-only novel of The House of Grey by Collin Earl. For more news, information, and updates, please visit houseofgreybook.com. Music by Figure of Fiends. Visit the band at myspace.com/Figure of Fiends. Cover art for The House of Grey provided by James Thane. More information at thayn.net.